Hello and welcome to the interview on France 24. We are in Geneva at the Africa CEO Forum. Hundreds of African CEOs have gathered for 2 days to discuss business. My guest is Mo Ibrahim. He's the founder of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. Thank you so much for being with us. So why did you come to Geneva, Mo Ibrahim, and what is the message you wanted to convey here?
Well, I came to Geneva because I always go wherever there's a lot of Africans. I like to join them to have an African conversation because we need to have more of these conversations. And it's always useful to put the case for Africa forward. What was your
message? What was your message today?
My main message today is that for us to move forward in Africa, number one priority, number two priority, number three priority is our need to achieve regional economic integration. You talk about Africa, but Africa is not a country. Africa is 54 countries. Each of these 54 countries have its own laws, its own borders, its own customs, and this is just not viable. It doesn't work.
So which country should actually start to do a union with which other country?
All the African countries have agreed many years ago the need for integration. This is nothing new. I'm not asking for something which is anti-grain or anti-establishment. That's why they formed all these regional economic communities, SADC here or the East African community here, etc., COMESA, and these are supposed to work towards harmonizing all the laws in Africa, opening the borders for goods, for trades, for people, etc. This has been going on for the last 20 years, but it's just not going at the right speed. It's not happening.
And why do you think?
It's just too lazy. There is no
lazy.
Absolutely, there is no urgency in the work. The political will to move. It needs a political will. It needs also a popular push to do that. It needs the business people also to put the case for that.
Business people have a part to play.
Absolutely. Who created the European Union? I haven't seen any demonstrations in London many years ago asking for let's unite in Europe. I have never seen any demonstrations in France asking for European Union. Who pushed for the project of Europe? It started with the power industries and then as the business people, because business wanted their trucks to move from Berlin or Frankfurt all the way to Scotland without stopping. That is the way really for their business to prosper. You need to create a bloc which is able to negotiate, to have a place on the big table. How can you counterbalance China or United States? You have to come together to do it, and business has a role to play. Unfortunately, African business is not pushing for that. And that's why I was shouting at my colleagues here, you need to stand up for your interest and for the interest of your people. Otherwise, African countries, as we call them now, are not viable.
What about political leaders? They probably have a role to play as well. Your foundation awards a prize for exceptional leadership, as you call it, that recognizes democratically elected African leaders. And the prize committee decided that none of the formal leaders met the award criteria. Isn't it disappointed, Mo Ibrahim?
Not at all. We launched this prize 6 years ago.
You also need leaders, though, to actually make
madam.
more integration.
No. Because we launched this prize 6 years ago. And we said from the outset, this is a prize for exceptional leaders. Exceptional leadership, excellence, is not a pension, is not an automatic award. In the past 6 years, we have been able to award it
three times.
Three times. Out of 6. Now, let me ask you a question. Let's assume we are happy to offer this prize for a European leader. Can you name to me 3 European leaders in the past 6 years who would have won this prize for excellence in leadership?
Depends what the criteria are, and that's the
excellence
problem.
In leadership. So of course, you have came democratically and left on time.
There are democracies in
That
Europe,
many people
so-
will do it. But who people developed move their country forward.
But do you think you should actually change the criteria?
You are not answering my question.
No, because it's about African leaderships.
Okay. But I'm trying to say the standard of excellence is difficult to attain. Even if you look at European leadership, you'll find it's difficult to find 3 leaders in 6 years. This is an exceptional prize and must remain an exceptional prize.
So it's not specific to Africa, that's what you mean?
No, it's only for Africa. But it must be given to exceptional people. I mentioned Europe just to give you an example that Africa is nothing wrong with Africa. Because in Europe you could not offer this prize.
So you remain optimistic to
Absolutely.
have a winner next year?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The Ibrahim Index of African Governance, so that's your index, found that governance in Africa has improved since 2000, especially in health and gender sectors. But the index found also that many of the continent's regional powerhouses, such as Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria, or South Africa, have experienced poor governance since 2006. So what's your take on this, Mo Ibrahim?
Yes, the relative decline in these 4 countries, I must say it is relative because our index is like a league table. Nigeria, for example, came down to the bottom 10 in our table. 10, in the bottom last 10.
Why?
Actually, when you looked at the numbers, it have not changed much. Nigerian average was scoring almost the same score for the last 5 or 10 years. It's not changed much. But what happened? The countries around Nigeria in the list moved up, improved. So relatively, Nigeria dropped down. So it's not a deterioration as such in Nigeria, but it's relative deterioration compared to other people. If the standards are rising in Africa, those countries who are standing still will be moving backward.
Mm-hmm. So are you still optimistic, generally speaking?
Because other guys are moving up. That's also good news.
That's also good news. So Africa's economies are going to expand by 5% on average next year. From what I read, 60 million African households may have annual incomes greater than $3,000 at market exchange rate. And by 2015, that number is expected to reach 100 million. So what do you think, Mo Ibrahim? Is there actually a real middle class emerging in Africa today?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's clearly a powerful emerging middle class. Urbanization of Africa is happening at a very fast rate. Africa today has more cities of 1 million people or more than China. Africa is really urbanizing very fast, and that is also helping produce this middle class much faster. But one thing we need also to mention is that we are concerned about the distribution of wealth. As we grow, where is the wealth going? And development has to be equitable. We should not leave people behind. The fruits of development should not be limited to the top 10% of the population. That is dangerous. And this trend actually is happening also in the United States and some European countries as well. It's not only a problem in Africa.
So is that the role of the states?
We have to be careful about the really a fair distribution of wealth in the countries. In the last 10, 20 years, things start to move in wrong direction, in my view. Not only in Africa, as I said, most of the wealth created in the United States in the last 30 years, and that's a huge amount of wealth.
But it's a problem if you lack political leadership, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's a problem if you lack political leadership in a country.
You lack leadership, but also you lack good governance, good policies. Okay, when you talk about taxation in U.S., for example, I know I moved across, but I'm trying to explain the point here that if most of the wealth goes to the top 1%, then middle class itself starts to suffer. and that produces a problem.
So government has to improve.
Have to improve.
For sure. So you founded, to finish this interview, Celtel, which is a mobile phone company that now serves 23 countries in Africa and in the Middle East. You sold it in 2005. The number of mobile phones in Africa has grown from 4 million in 98 to more than 400 million today. Do you think that the phone sector will still evolve in a good way in Africa? I mean, do you think that technologies will still offer new business opportunities?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And what's interesting is that now is that Africa really is a leader in mobile phones. We have a fastest growth rate. Actually, most of the new applications on mobiles actually coming from Africa. We in Africa really we're the fastest movers in the phone payment systems, which replacing the banks now. And this is a...
You pay with your mobile phone, right?
We pay for phone. Okay. And people transfer money to each other by mobile phones. This is happening now in Kenya. There is millions of transactions every week.
So it would keep growing, you think?
And keep going. People introduce so many applications in this all kind of security of people checking fake medicine. You can do it by mobile phone. You can actually do fighting corruptions now. There is special sites. If at the border a customs official asks you for a bribe, you take his picture, send it to a website, and he's out of a job. So corruption stops there. People using mobile phones in such imaginative way. African people are so creative. Given the chance, they come up with wonderful solutions. So watch out. We're gonna come to you with some interesting technology in France. You're gonna love it.
And so French investors should invest in Africa?
Absolutely.
In the mobile telephone sector?
If they want to make money, that's where to go.
Okay, thank you so much, Mo Ibrahim.
You.
Thanks for being my guest. Thanks to you for watching, and stay with us on France 24.
Thank you very much.